got this 2016 F550 with a steering concern. So the issue is, I think they're driving down the road and they'll hit a bump and the steering wheel will start to chatter back and forth, or you get like, I mean, they said they got a death wobble a little bit here and there. I haven't been able to reproduce it, but there are some different areas that you can check for different steering issues. So some problem areas can be ball joints. They can be sticking, they can be dried out. I think the earlier Super Duties, or like around the 2000s, I think the ones with the 6.0s had problems with the ball joints getting tight. So you turn the wheel one way and it would just stay there. It wouldn't center or self-correct back to center anymore. It would just kind of stick where it is here and there. I think they had problems with the steering boxes and then also problems with the ball joints. If I had to guess, I would say the issue probably started with the ball joints and then wore out the steering boxes, but I'm not exactly sure what would have caused one or the other. But those are gonna be two concerns with those. So when you can get wandering, things like that, where you kind of like just kind of turning back and forth and you're kind of just moving along, and that could be attributed to your steering box, I would imagine, or your worn out tie rod ends and things like that. But if you turn one way and it stays there, something like that, I mean, your steering box could be too tight or worn, or like I say, your ball joints could be stuck, or another issue could be your universal joints in your drive shaft here. You could have a couple of seized or multiple seized caps, in which case as you turn it, it would stick where it is. So you can see how you rotate it, the cap actually kind of spins. You might not be able to see it, but anyway, the caps spin around the center section there. So as you turn, you see how it's rotating. If you get that could be an issue that's holding the wheel in one direction. So you turn and then the wheel would get stuck there because it doesn't want to turn back because those caps are seized up. A way you can check to see if it is the caps themselves is to lock your four-wheel drive, turn the wheel to the side like this, and then try to rotate it. If it is the cap, the wheel won't want to rotate. It'll just it'll bind up, or it'll be really hard to rotate. So if you put it straight and it rotates fine, and then you turn it and then you get binding where it doesn't want to rotate, then it could be your caps are stuck. I mean, that if you have like I don't know, something with a continuously locked front end, like I know the Dodge that I have that doesn't have a disconnect in the year that I have. So basically the front joints are turning all the time because the hubs, they're splined into the hubs and then tightened. It doesn't have locking hubs. It's basically just in there all the time, and there's no disconnect in the middle of the axle, so they're always turning. Something like that. You can also get, if you turn a little bit and then the wheel wants to kind of kick back and forth a little bit, it might be because that knuckle is kind of like rotating in there, and it's not coming back straight, and it's kind of trying to make the wheel kick back and forth. So I'm not really explaining it very well, but these are some kind of things that it can do, kind of, sort of, wishy-washy video I'm making. The death wobble, where you hit a bump and then your vehicle shakes back and forth like it's like the wheels are kind of coming back and forth. A lot of the time, it's usually these, I can't remember the word for it right now. I don't know, I'll think about it later. Anyway, it's usually these kind of joints here. You'll have one here. I've seen this ball joint go bad in a truck with only 15,000 miles on it. had a plow on a lot, and I've seen this go bad. And what happens is you hit a bump and the axle will kind of pop back and forth in this ball joint here, and it will the whole axle will kind of shift back and forth, which is what you get, and it's like the axle's just moving back and forth. And because the steering's connected to the frame and to the wheel, this is being held straight, but the axle's actually moving. So it's almost like you're moving the tie rod back and forth really quick, but it's not the tie rod, it's the actual axle moving back and forth and causing the wheels to kind of wander around. Yeah, so I've seen this go bad. I haven't really seen it go bad up here. Well, that doesn't mean it won't. I just have not seen it yet. I know this is usually your issue in a Jeep or something like that. As long, I mean, if you have the coil springs and the I think this one's like twin beam or whatever this one's called. But if you have a leaf spring axle, then you usually don't have these problems, because this link here, you don't have this link usually in a leaf spring, because this kind of causes the axle to shift to the left a little bit, or the passenger side, whichever direction it's going. It kind of, as the suspension compresses, it kind of swings over, and you have the ability to do this in a vehicle with all the links in it. But like leaf springs, it doesn't have the ability. It kind of binds against the leaf spring. I think some of the I think the YJ Jeep came out with leaf springs, and then they had this cross link here, and that was an issue with those. So, I mean, you got all these tie rod ends here. Usually what I'll do is I'll try to have somebody get in the vehicle, and I'll have them turn side to side. With the vehicle on the ground, it works a little easier because you get the weight on the wheels, and it keeps them from turning as much, and you can see the play a lot better. And so when I'm looking through to see what the problem would be, like I said, I usually have it on the ground, and I'll have somebody turn the wheel back and forth. You don't have to go way back. I mean, you don't have to go like lock to lock usually. It's just pretty much from one side or the other of center. And basically you put the pressure on one way, and then you take it off and put the pressure on the other way. And you'll see if these joints are bad, because they'll kind of pop back and forth. And you'll get the plane, and where you'll see it actually move on the bushing pins or the studs. And that's usually how I'll check all the tie rod ends and the links. So with checking this centering link here, what I'll do is I'll keep it on the ground, and then I'll just grab the body, like the fender or the bumper, and I'll just push it back and forth and try to get it wiggling like back and forth. Well, I guess as aggressively as I can, and you'll see if there's play in there, because as you try to move the body back and forth, this will pop one way or the other if that's bad, or the bushing up there also. I say I've had the Dodge I had the same problem with those being loose, and I think that one just had bushings. It didn't have this ball joint thing here. It just, like I said, it was just bushings with a bolt through, and I had those were bad on mine, so I changed those, and then I didn't have that problem anymore. That one I kind of felt the wandering a little bit, and you hit a bump and you can kind of hear a clunk. So that's what was wrong with mine. I mean, you hit bumps side to side, you can hear kind of rattling in your end links here too, so that could be an issue also. Like if you just have kind of noises and things. And then you can get play inside these bushings here that are in the sway bar, and then as you hit bumps, this will clunk up and down up against the frame or the bottom, and you can get noises from there as well. So I checked this over. I didn't have any problems with playing any of the links. These tires were pretty much worn right out, so I had the tires changed and an alignment done to see if that remedied the issue. It did not. So I revisited this. So what I did was I just kind of, I moved the wheel back and forth, and I kind of felt some play, and not really play, but so I straightened the wheel out, and it's usually not easy to turn these. I mean, you want it to be pretty easy. You could tell if it's binding. If it's really, really hard to turn, then you have something stuck. But I mean, usually you can move them without any huge degree of difficulty. You definitely want some type of resistance. You don't want it to be like just dropping one way or the other, because then you might be having a steering box issue. But what I was doing anyways, because I could move it probably a little bit like this, and I had this much play in it. Or not, well, let's not say this much play, but this much resistance. It was as much as I have now, because it said I disconnected the stabilizer. So like back and forth here to there, I didn't feel any resistance, or any more than I'm feeling now with it unhooked. But what I did was, when I went all the way, it started to get difficult to turn, so I could feel it resisting there. And then when I came back, you know, it's hard to do with one hand. And when I came back, there was resistance again, and then over here, then I went to the other side, and the same thing happened. But I could kind of like leave it in an area, and I'd feel like pretty much no resistance from the stabilizer in a specific area. So it's like here, I could move it a little bit. Well, and then I could go like that, and it would be easy here or there. And it seemed like there was always a dead spot someplace. So I disconnected the stabilizer here, and usually you're supposed to have even pressure on these, because like I said, it's a shock. And what I was getting was, so it's like hard to push there, and then you pull it out, and it's hard to pull here, but there's this dead spot in it where there's nothing there. So you can see how I'm just going in with it, but there's more travel. So I'll pull it out, and now it's hard, and then I'll have this dead spot. So push it in, it's hard to push in, but then I got this dead spot, which is where my problem's coming from. So I'm hitting the bump, and I'm getting this dead spot where it's wobbling. And then when you turn the wheels, you feel it like it's actually working, but then you're driving down the road, it relaxes, you hit a bump, and you got a dead spot where it's not doing anything. So I'm to believe that this is what my steering problem is. So like I say, you're driving, you hit a bump, and then it just does what it's gonna do without the thing even hooked up. And that's where we're getting the wobble from. I know on some of the older trucks, I have another video of a binding steering wheel in a F-150. I think that covers a lot of different years, and that problem with that one was the steering shaft was had the same issue. It had universal joints in the steering shaft, and two of the caps were stuck. So as you turn it, they were getting bound up. Ironically, I still have it, so I can show you. Let's see. So like I said, this has steering, or not steering, but this has universal joints in it also. This side is good, but this side up here, I believe, was the bad side. So I think this was the top. So same scenario, it turned fine one way, but it doesn't turn it all the other way. So as you go to turn it, it wants to rotate all four caps because it's at an angle. So that's why it'll go smooth for a little bit, and then it'll bind, and it'll go smooth, and then bind, and smooth, and then bind. And that's because this two of these caps were seized up, which is this one and the bottom one. So it moves that way, but not the other way. So that can be a steering problem. So I mean, you can get rattling too in your steering shaft. I think I was looking at an 08 Chevy 3500, and there was a lot of play in the steering wheel, and it was the first joint that was inside the column. So as where the column tilts, there was like a plastic joint in there. It's kind of like the same universal joint thing, and that was worn out. And I guess at the time, that section of the shaft was not a serviceable part, so you would have to replace the entire column to fix that problem. So yeah, I mean it kind of depends on what your problem is as you're driving. If it's sticking back and forth, I would look at stuff like universal joints or your ball joints or your universal joint if you're getting sticking. Let's say with the steering shaft, if you're getting binding in certain spots as you rotate and it's kind of like a pattern, then you could look at your steering shaft for that. I wouldn't rule out the steering box. If you get like wander, where you're kind of wandering around, I'd look at probably like the centering link here, or like the tie rod ends could be loose. If you hear clunking and stuff, it really could be almost anything in here with a clunk. I'd say these are just kind of little areas to look at. I've seen shocks before in a Suburban that I had that they were clunking when you hit a bump. The actual shock itself, I don't know what the problem was, but the shock itself was actually clunking as it went up and down, which is kind of a different one for me. But anyway, there's lots of little things you can look at. So these are just kind of some suggestions I can offer for things to check. So anyway, hope that can help somebody. If you have any other suggestions or things to add, leave them in the comments section, and hopefully we can build upon what I've started. So anyway, thanks for watching. So I figured I'd give you a little bit more of an example of what's wrong with this one. I hooked the steering stabilizer back up. So see right there, I don't really feel much resistance, but then I hit that spot and now I feel resistance, and I can hear the stabilizer gurgling too. So I'll come back here, there's a little resistance there, but you can, as I go, I can get that spot where I don't really have the resistance. So see, it's working there and it's working there, but you can feel it and you can kind of hear it clicking where it actually is starting to grab. So that's kind of how I knew it was that. I mean, you can hear it start gurgling as it takes effect, and that's pretty much one of the only thing that's gonna control the side to side that you're gonna feel a difference in, because the steering box is gonna be full of fluid all the time, so you're gonna feel it go through. It's not gonna change the resistance in the steering box really. So I mean, based upon the symptom, it's generally the steering stabilizer, or I guess it could be the steering box as well if it's really loose. But anyway, this was a steering stabilizer, so I figured I'd show you kind of what I was talking about, how it has like a dead spot in it, and that's kind of what it looks like. So got a new steering stabilizer for that truck. It's not a factory one. I tried to call Ford numerous times to see if what their price was, but no one was ever there. So just got this one from Advance. It's the Monroe one, but you can see this doesn't have that couple inches of easy play. It's pretty firm, so that's what the problem was. This one's got like this little adapter piece here, and some instructions that are not exactly the way they're supposed to be. This has got it on the end with the shaft that goes in, but this doesn't actually fit in the end that they have on the picture, so I guess it's got to go on this end. But anyway, so that's what that problem was. I guess thank you for watching. Have a nice day.